the last session of the day, I would like to re-invite again Professor Neena Modi and invite upon stage Professor Vikram Datta. Professor Neena Modi, she is a consultant neonatologist at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, London, and professor at Imperial College, London. She is the academic lead of multidisciplinary neonatal research group addressing early life growth and nutritional determinants of long-term health. She also leads the neonatal data analysis unit that integrates the use of clinical electronic data for research and health services support. She has been elected President of Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health. Welcome again, Professor Neena Modi. I'd like to introduce Professor Vikram Datta. Professor Vikram Datta is a professor of neonatology at Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital and Lady Hardinge Medical College, New Delhi. With his extensive national and international publications, Dr. Datta is now a member of the editorial board of Indian Journal of Pediatrics and has been a past editor-in-chief of Journal of Neonatology. He is also a WHO Fellow in Clinical Epidemiology. He has contributed immensely to the Indian Newborn Action Plan 2014. His areas of special interest include neonatal ventilation, infection, neurobehavior, pain and epidemiology. Over to Professor Neena.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure, a great privilege to be part of the team that is taking this final session, because it's been a really pleasurable 2 days and a great honour to have been here. So I've asked to speak to this topic, international collaboration in newborn health, but of course I guess the whole of the conference has really been about discussing international collaboration. So what I want to do is to really just try and put all of this in context, and in order to do that I'm going to go back in time first of all. And of course we all know the reasons why international collaboration and newborn research is important, and that is really because the pace of reduction in clinical uncertainty needs to speed up. It's been very slow, and to a large extent what research does get done is a bit of a lottery. There are the vagaries of funding, being in the right place, the right time, the right investigator, and so on and so on and so forth. And as we've discussed here over these last 2 days, there are so many questions that remain unanswered. So we really do need to expedite this and speed the pace of doing research. Because if we don't do that, as someone very graphically said, the reason we do this is because of the babies. If we don't do this, the babies will suffer. So what I'm going, and I think the other thing to emphasize is that, of course, adult health starts with newborn health. So we're not just talking about babies and children, we're talking about the health of the population. So what I'm going to do in the next 20 minutes is just go back a little bit in time and talk about the history of neonatal research, and then talk about new opportunities, and round up with some 5-point plan, if I can put it like that, for action to improve newborn health and newborn clinical outcomes. Now, the good news is that newborn health and preterm health have risen to the top of political agendas around the world, and newborn health is being recognised, and for this reason we've seen these sorts of reports being produced, every newborn, an action plan to end preventable deaths from UNICEF and the World Health Organization, and then the Born Too Soon report, which is the Global Action Report on Preterm Birth. So for a long time newborns were invisible, but no more. They are very, very visible now. And the World Health Organization has produced a framework for high-quality perinatal care, and this, of course, includes essential newborn care, newborn resuscitation, and appropriate care for preterm and small babies and newborn infections. So there is wide global recognition of the need to tackle these challenges, and that is very, very good for us, because, as I say, babies have now become very visible indeed. But going back in time, it's said that one of the first controlled trials, not a randomized trial, but a controlled trial, was actually a trial in young people. And it says, this is a story from the Bible, this is the story of Daniel and his 3 comrades who were sent to the court of King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon around 600 BC. And they wanted to continue their diet, which they considered healthy, which was pulses, grains, and water. And they rejected the king's diet, which was meat and wine. And so they argued, the story goes that they argued for the right to continue with their diet while the rest of the young people went on to the king's diet. And their health remained good and improved, whereas those of the other young men who followed the diet of meat and wine worsened. So this is an apocryphal story, who knows whether it's true or not, but it is a story that puts the the non-randomized but controlled trial in the context of pediatric practice. And then we all know about the phrase evidence-based medicine, but where did it come from? Well, it's said that actually it came from Persia, and it came from Ibn Sina, called Avicenna in the West. And he was a very eminent figure in Islamic learning, and he wrote a canon of medicine which contained a very precise set of rules for how to test medicines. Now, this was way, way ahead of his time, and for this reason, he's widely held to be the father of evidence-based medicine. Don't just take a medicine because you think it works, or you hope it works, or someone tells you it works, but test it properly. However, in more recent years, Archie Cochrane is held to be the modern founding father, and his book in 1972, 40 to 50 years ago now, his book Effectiveness and Efficiency led to acceptance of controlled studies during the 1970s and 1980s, and this really paved the way for evidence-based medicine. Now, the term evidence-based medicine was coined by Guyot, and that was only in 1990, not that long ago. So this is a really recent phenomenon in modern medical practice. But I want to also talk about another story from history, and that is first of all to ask you, does anyone know who this man is? Nope. No. Any other suggestions? That was Fleming, someone said. He's not very widely known, so don't worry if you don't know him. He's not very widely known, but he should be widely known. Does anyone know who this is? Oh, yes. Okay, so this is Marilyn Monroe. Everyone knows who she is. And the reason I'm putting these two pictures up, because these two figures actually have got a very pertinent tale for paediatricians and paediatric research. The gentleman on the top right is Dr. Louis Lassagne. He was a very prominent advocate in the 1950s for randomized placebo-controlled trials. This was at a time when the drug industry was really largely unregulated. So a company could produce a drug and could go about marketing it. They didn't really have to produce strong evidence that it worked. And Louis Lassagne was a pioneering advocate for the randomized placebo-controlled trial, for drug licensing to be underpinned by good evidence, and also for the necessity for informed consent for participation in research studies. And he conducted the first placebo-controlled trial of a medication prior to market launch. Does anyone know what this medication was? The first medication to be the subject of a placebo randomized controlled trial before market launch. What's that?
Aspirin.
Aspirin, someone saying? No, it wasn't aspirin.
Thalidomide.
Sorry?
Thalidomide.
Thalidomide? Any other takers? Well done, well done. It was thalidomide, absolutely. Well done, gold star there. Now, sorry? Ah, that was the clue, exactly. Well done. You see, the professor always reads the fine print there. So, it was thalidomide. And the reason why Marilyn Monroe's picture is up there is because the press at the time said, if thalidomide had been available, if it had been available more quickly, Marilyn Monroe would not have died because, of course, she died from an overdose of barbiturates, and thalidomide was a safe sedative. So that's the link between Louis Lassagne and Marilyn Monroe. But of course it was thalidomide, and the reason I'm putting this up as an important story for paediatricians is because what a tragedy this is. This was the first placebo-controlled trial of a medication before market launch, and yet the trial protocol did not include examining the impact on women who are pregnant and their babies. So the lesson for paediatricians is drugs that are used in paediatric practice need to involve children, they need to involve infants. And to this day, as you all know, that's not the case. About 95% of the medications we use in newborn medicine have not actually been tested in newborn populations. So I think this is a really important tale from history for all paediatricians. So if you look at the cartoon on the right, on the left, that really exemplifies this. If we don't know which drugs are safest and most effective for pregnant women and children, why don't they let us into more clinical trials? Well, up till now, the mantra has been, you need to be protected from research. So we've been in a real catch-22 situation. Now, this doesn't serve our patients well, because of course common sense is not enough. And over there on the right, many of my colleagues will know what book this is, but the younger members of the audience may not be familiar with this book. This is Dr. Benjamin Spock's Baby and Child Care. Anyone heard of this? Yes? Good, a few nods. So for 50 years, this was a bestseller, second only to the Bible. It sold billions of copies, and it was advice to parents, and it contained one piece of really salutary advice. And that was, parents were advised to put their newborn babies on their fronts to sleep. Now, common sense is not enough, is it? That was wrong advice, it was bad advice, and it was promulgated by the leading experts of the time. It was wrong. So there are lots of other lessons from history about how we got it wrong, which is why I say never listen to an expert, ever. So that was placing babies on their front to sleep. Of course, that increases the risk of cot death. When I was at medical school, routine separation of mothers and babies was practiced in many parts of the world. This still takes place. Coming on more recently, postnatal steroids and the link with increase in cerebral palsy. And then, of course, resuscitation with 100% oxygen. For years, we trained our juniors to resuscitate in 100% oxygen. This was wrong. So I would like every young person in the audience to just reflect on what you will be saying 30 years from now. Just look back at your younger self and say, gosh, what was I doing that was wrong? And what part did I play in actually bringing some evidence to bear on the subject? Anyone know what's going on in the top left-hand corner?
Nasal feeding.
Nasal feeding, that's right. Nasal feeding, a very curious practice that used to be advocated in the last century. And over at the bottom left-hand corner there, magnesium sulfate enemas for respiratory distress syndrome. Gosh, did that cause a lot of harm to babies. So more recently then, and by now I'm into 1980, I'm very proud of the fact that the British Paediatric Association, which was of course the forerunner of the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health, was the first to put their head above the parapet in 1980 when they published guidance on research. And at that time there was very little research carried out involving children because of the fact that the prevalent view was that children needed to be protected from research and the risks of research. But the 1980 guidance from the BPA really put their heads above the parapet, because at that time the General Medical Council, the Royal College of Physicians, the Declaration of Helsinki, all of the authoritative bodies were really saying the only sort of research that could be done with children was so-called therapeutic research, where the child had a real chance of benefiting because a new medication was being tested. So, for example, observational research was completely taboo, and all sorts of other forms of research was taboo. But the BPA, as I say, they were really bold, and they said research involving children is important. It should be supported and encouraged, and research which involves the child and is of no benefit to that child, i.e. non-therapeutic research, is not necessarily either unethical or illegal. Now this may seem commonplace to you today, but at that time it was a very, very bold statement indeed. And ethics and the way in which society views these issues does change with time. So updated guidance was issued by the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health in 2000, and then I had the privilege of leading a working group which updated it again, and that was published in archives last year in 2014. So these things change with time and evolve with time. And just 3 days ago on Friday, I don't know if any of you have seen The Lancet that I came out on Friday. Anyone? So, 72 hours ago, the cover of The Lancet has got this statement. The time has come to protect children and young people through research, not from research. Very, very powerful statement indeed, and they're alluding to an editorial within The Lancet that reports on this publication here on the left, which is from the Nuffield Council of Bioethics. I really recommend this to all of you. You can get it from the website. And it is talking about children in clinical research having spoken to children and their parents. And it's a really, really powerful document indeed, and I strongly recommend that this is reading material for everyone here. You will be very, very moved by it. So I think we need to consider a pipeline to improve newborn health. And it starts off with research to generate evidence. But then implementation of that evidence. Don't leave it on the shelf. Bring it into the clinics. Bring it into the hospitals. Implement that evidence to improve patients, the care that we provide, and patient safety and patient outcomes. But we also need to evaluate it constantly, because medicine and science do not stand still. And so we constantly need to be evaluating what we're doing, looking to see whether we're implementing it adequately and satisfactorily, and whether or not patient outcomes are truly improving. But then further along the pipeline, we have to think about advocacy to raise awareness. It's taken years and years and years of lobbying on behalf of various groups to actually raise newborn health higher and higher up the visibility spectrum. And we need professional leadership to develop policies which are built upon real evidence and real demonstrable evidence of impact. So I've spoken before several times about the power of information and the fact that in the UK we do now have a national neonatal research database. Those of you who are interested in finding out more about this, you can go to this interactive map, which is at www.imperial.ac.uk/NDAO, and you can find out more about how this works. And I say that interactive map shows you each and every one of the 200 neonatal units in the country, the level of care that they provide, also children's hospitals and children's hospices and children's and neonatal surgical centres. And you'll also find quite a lot of information about what is flowing out of these data. And essentially, in summary, what's flowing out of these data, the National Neonatal Research Database, is a whole raft of things, going from national audit through to research. I've just put a few examples there. Everything that is coming out of that would not fit on this slide. Testing of quality improvement, support for the delivery of services and evaluation of services, and a very important parent engagement program, because the parents whose children's data are in this database have got a part to play, a very important part to play, about how their children's data is actually used. So some of the outputs, I alluded to this earlier on today. This is simply a description of the growth pattern of preterm babies in the UK. So it's not suggesting this is a standard of any sort. It's simply describing how babies grow in the UK today, and it presents the amalgamated data from 40 neonatal units who took part in this study around the UK. And it was the #1 top 10 most highly read papers in Archives, the fetal and neonatal edition of Archives in 2014. A truly collaborative effort, this. Then here's some data which has not been published yet, and you can see 3 bars for 22, 23-week gestation infants, 24 weeks and 25-week gestation infants, and you'll see data from the Epicure studies, which were so well conducted. The first Epicure cohort 1995, the second one 2006, and then here data from the UK Neonatal Collaborative, which is data which comes out of our National Neonatal Research Database. So this was, the data that came out of this was done quite simply, no expense at all. All we did was interrogate the existing database, and you can see that there is a statistically significant improvement in the mortality and the survival here for 22, 23-week gestation babies in this most recent cohort. And although there has been a survival for these 24 and 25-week gestation babies, it doesn't reach statistical significance. But we're now currently, this was 2009 to 2011, and we're currently evaluating the 2010 to 2014 data. So I'm waiting to see with interest what happens there. And then quality improvement. So somebody spoke today about a bundle. It was Jayshree, I think, Dr. Jayshree, who spoke about a bundle for breastfeeding. So in the east of England, one of our networks introduced a care bundle to improve breastfeeding for preterm babies. But they wanted to convince their administration that this actually worked. Because if they couldn't make the case that this actually worked, if they couldn't demonstrate evidence of impact, they wouldn't have been allowed to spend public funds in actually continuing. So what did they do? They came to us, to the National Neonatal Research Database, which of course is theirs as well. It's a collaboration. And what we did was compared the change. So here on the y-axis is percentage exclusive maternal breast milk at discharge for very preterm infants. This is time along the x-axis. The yellow line is the trend for the whole of the UK, and you can see it's going up. but you can see that the trend line for the east of England, where the care bundle was introduced, went up more steeply. Now, if they hadn't had national data against which to make this comparison, they would not have been able to demonstrate that their care bundle actually had impact. And that is the power of having population data. So I would really want to strongly recommend that this is something that you can crack. So quickly then, 2 years ago we published this paper in The Lancet, A Healthy Nation Strengthening Child Health in the UK. And we described the landscape for children's research in the UK and set out some recommendations. And essentially, there's some, as with all things in life, there are some good things, but some bad things too. And one of the bad things is that children are underrepresented in every single metric of research activity that you cared to look at. And there are other difficulties too, such as a mismatch, because industry does not support children's research well. And for example, one piece of evidence to back up my statement is that for diseases where at least 60% of the burden is carried by children, only 12% of industry-funded trials actually involve children. So industry has tended to be focused much more on the adult end of the market rather than the child end of the market. And we need professional leadership to change this round. But we also need to acknowledge that the majority of children's medical research charities are quite small. So we need collaboration to leverage the sort of support we need for funds. So I'm going to end now with my 5-point plan for improving children's research and child health outcomes. And the first is international collaboration between physicians. And what might this mean in practice? Well, it means, I think, in the first place, a commitment globally to collaborative, systematic testing of clinical problems. I commend to you the idea of a high-quality, standardized minimum data set, because that means that you can pool these data both nationally and internationally for observational studies, for delivery of trial protocols, and for evaluations of the sorts that I showed you examples of. Secondly, it needs professional leadership, and I've put here the logos of 3 organizations that it's been my privilege to have been associated with, the Neonatal Society, the Academic Paediatric Association of Great Britain and Ireland, and the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. And I think professional organisations, wherever they may be, have got a really vital role to advocate and to lobby. And I've put up here 2 publications, well, Education and Practice in Archives of Disease in Childhood, because that now contains a new, from last year it contained, sorry, the year before, contained a new section of, entitled Science and Research for Clinicians. And here is a RCPCH document, which is a guide to training in research for the benefit of children. The third point is enabling partnerships, and so I'm very pleased that we've been able to establish in the UK a child health research collaboration, which is a growing partnership. It's a forum for children's research charities and other funders to come together. Each of these charities is quite small. The largest children's research charity in the UK has got a turnover of 3.5 million. You contrast that with the turnover of something like Cancer Research UK or the Wellcome Trust or the Medical Research Council, which is much bigger indeed. And overall, there's £2.2 billion of public and charitable research expenditure in the UK, but less than 5% of that is directed at children's studies. So this collaboration is a forum for people to come together to deliver projects that they can't do on their own. Fourthly, then, there's advocacy. And if you go to the RCPCH website, you will see that just last week we've issued a challenge to our new government. Some of you will know that the new government was elected. We had quite a surprising election, was elected just a short while ago. And so we've issued a challenge to the new government, and I've just put up a few of our challenge statements here. These are not all of them, but a few which are relevant to our discussions. We're calling for an increase in the number of child health research posts, a fund for children's research, protected time for clinicians to contribute to and support research, commissioning to support research and reduce uncertainty, so embed it into day-to-day clinical practice. And we're also calling upon government to have their policies informed by good evidence. Obesity is a big problem everywhere. We would like the government to have formal tests of the impact on childhood obesity of taxes to restrict sugar, sweet beverages and energy-dense foods. And we want an evaluation of the impact of current fiscal policy upon child poverty. I don't know whether the government's going to listen to us, but we're certainly going to say these things. And we're calling for a children's minister to be appointed to draw all of these strands together. And then fifthly, not last, perhaps most importantly, we need to hear our patient voices and work with them. And up here I've put the logo of And Us. This is RCPCH, And Us, and Us is the voice of parents and children and young people. And everything that the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health does actually includes their voices. We have a very, very active youth panel and a parent advisory panel. So thank you very much again for inviting me to be a part of this really, really fantastic meeting. And once again, I'm going to say thank you as well to my research group, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here today. And of course, as always, the parents, babies, our collaborators, and our funders. Thank you very much indeed.
Good afternoon. I thank the organizers for calling me here, Praveen, Ravi, and all the group from UK. And my regards to Dr. Neena Modi, President RCPCH, for gracing this occasion. I represent the Indian part of the international collaborative scene, and I think when this topic was given to me, it made me delve deeper and deeper into these aspects. And there are certain new facts which I came across when I was researching the topic. Well, I represent Kalavati Saran Children's Hospital, which is a part of a 100-year-old medical college in New Delhi, and it's called Lady Hardinge Medical College. And I was the ex-secretary of the National Neonatology Forum for 2013-14. Well, just to briefly take you through this, we will be talking about what are international collaborations, needs in India. I try to make it more India specific. Existing international collaborations which we did when I was the secretary of the National Neonatology Forum, and very important because for the last 2 days I think most of us have been talking about collaborative trials, the need for greater research and other things. We are going to talk about the rules governing collaborative research in India, the challenges and the way forward. But international collaborations, as we all know, could be bilateral, multilateral or regional, and they in fact need to be done in areas which are of mutual interest. Now that's very, very important, that collaborative research cannot be thrust upon a particular party, and it needs to be mutually interesting for the party to do it. Now the need for international collaborations as we see in India would probably range from exchange of scientific material. I was talking to Professor Modi in lunchtime, and that is something which from the Indian perspective, the scientific information often comes quite late here, and translating that into practice takes even longer. The sensitization to evidence and workshops like this play a major role in sensitizing us to exchange of scientific information. Now second is exchange of scientists, technicians for training under the projects. The third is joint execution of scientific projects, and that's what most of us are seeing, and I can see the beautiful monograph of the Helix trial which is already under place here. And organization of joint scientific meetings, workshops or symposia in identified subjects. Well, these are all identified areas which are taken from Government of India document. These have not been decided by me or put up like that. These are the areas where the Indian government and the ministry believes that these are the areas where we could do international collaborations. Now coming to my organization, that's National Neonatology Forum, 35 years old organization. Most of you are part of that, and we are proud that we worked hard to take this organization forward. We have Dr. Vani, one of our founder members here, and together we've tried to build this organization to the heights which it has achieved. I will basically, in the next 3 slides, I would just like to show you the MOUs and the collaborations which National Neonatology Forum did in 2014. The first was with Child and Adolescent Health Directorate in Afghanistan, Afghan Pediatric Society, American Academy of Pediatrics. These are all written MOUs. Ethiopian Pediatric Association, Nigerian Association of Pediatrics. We also had MOUs with UNICEF Afghanistan, India Country Office, UNICEF, Bihar State Office, UNICEF, and Chhattisgarh. These are of course funded by the UNICEF, so they come as the international perspective. Save the Children, John Snow Incorporation. This is underway in 2014, and Regional Office of UNICEF for SAARC countries. This is currently based in Kathmandu. Now, besides this, we also have working relationship with the Oxford Southampton Group UK for NNF fellowships, which was started in 2013. We also collaborated with McMaster University Canada and the Great Working Group in 2014. We collaborated with South Asia Cochrane Center in 2014. We collaborated with Zulekha Hospital, started the NNF fellowship training program there to train our doctors at Dubai. And then very recently we have the pioneers from the Neonatal Transport Service London and the NES group, Praveen, Ravi and the entire group. This was started in 2014. Now what you see here is some of the photographs. This is one where the Afghanistan MOU was being signed. This is the SAARC representative of UNICEF. And then we have the American Academy of Pediatric group visiting one of our outreach facilities. And this is the Washington, on the right side is the Washington MOU with the American Academy of Pediatrics. You can see the representatives from 4 global organizations sitting here and doing the MOU. Now these are some of our MOUs which we did. This is the Afghanistan. Now the areas where we collaborated, mainly in the National Neonatology Forum, were organizations of workshops and seminars, skill updation of doctors and nurses. Well, that's very, very important. By hands-on practices, by workshops, by symposia, whatever. Exchange of doctors for training. It's presently in vogue with our Oxford Southampton group. Quality improvement through UNICEF and British Medical Journal. Equipment transfer, Norway-India Partnership Initiative through UNICEF. Exchange of scientific information through AAP, UNICEF, and mapping of health facilities with JSI and USAID. So these were some of the areas where in National Neonatology Forum we collaborated with our international partners. Now these are some of the photographs. This is a photograph from the inaugural NEST course at New Delhi. You can see our team from London and our experts from here, Bangalore and other places. Now what did this collaboration lead to? Well, what you see here are snapshots from public and private units. And I would request anyone to take a guess which is a private unit and which is a public unit. Well, these are level 2 facilities. And if you see these facilities, these are the facilities which have been accredited by the National Neonatology Forum with the support of the NIPI and UNICEF, and also in active collaboration with the various state governments. And you can see these units are absolutely state-of-art units, and this process got us the BMJ Award nomination for 2014 for the NNF quality improvement in healthcare at the national level. And this is what basically these collaborations led to. Now we also collaborated with AAP. Recently we did NNF Neonatal Resuscitation AAP TOT, and our friends, you can see most of our friends from AAP here. And this was the group which traveled to Patna, in one of the states of India where we have the highest neonatal mortality and many babies die because of birth asphyxia. They were sensitized to the real-time scenario, and we had a national TOT on NR India there in collaboration with our friends from American Academy of Pediatrics. This was done on 8th December 2014. Well, apart from this, I had the chance to have recently in San Diego, I had the chance to be a part of some individual international collaborations. These are parts of that. Now, this is basically what we did last year, the collaborations. Last year, my entire focus as Secretary NNF was to build up partnerships and collaborations, because we believe that it is the collaborations and the partnerships which will take the organization to the next level. Now, once we talk about collaboration, it's very important to know the rules, because in India, you may cross the red light maybe 10 times, nobody says anything, but the day you run out of luck, you are caught and you are branded and you have to pay the fine. So it's like that. So it's slightly flexible approach. I hate to say that from the podium, but this is what happens. Well, there are two divisions which guide the collaborative research in India, and I think this is very important for our international partners and also all our potential researchers to know this. It is the International Health Division in ICMR. This was set in 2000, which oversees all international collaborations. And then there is a final approval there is a high-level committee which is called the Health Ministries Screening Committee, which was set up in 1980s. This is also called the HMSC. Now let's see what is the role of the International Health Division. International Health Division accepts all the manuscripts and all the proposals which are coming up for collaborative research. So you have to submit it to the International Health Division. The details of this are available at icmr.nic.in. This will first do a cursory evaluation of your proposal by a team of experts, and if it finds that the proposal is okay as far as the documentation is concerned, and also whether it is opportune to do this and it is feasible and there are no major ethical issues, it will pass it on to the HMSC, which meets every 3 months in New Delhi. Now, the HMSC, the details of how the HMSC functions are present in a 2-page document which is available at the following web address. So you could probably have this web address, and this will tell you how the HMSC is going to evaluate your proposal and what are the guiding principles for the acceptance or rejection of a particular proposal. Now, having said that, the HMSC is chaired by the Secretary, Department of Health Research, and it has representatives from Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science, and Director General of Armed Forces Medical Services. So you can see it's a very high level committee to which your research proposal is going to go, and this meets once every 3 months. Now, having said that, there are some 17 pre-existing MOUs which India as a nation has had with these organizations. Now, if you see, we have an Indo-German program, we have a program with the INSERM France, we have an Indo-US program, we have Canadian Institutes of Health. These are existing MOUs. We have with Helmholtz Association, University of Minnesota, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine UK, Medical Research Council UK, and apart from this, a host of other professional organizations and academic bodies. Now, when I was reviewing the areas in which these MOUs are existing, like very rightly pointed out by Dr. Modi, none of these were specifically directed towards the pediatric population or leave alone the neonates. So the neonate, like we have been discussing right through the day, was invisible in most of these research MOUs which are existence in this country. Now this is what we need to advocate, and there comes the role of the professional bodies as well as individual organizations. Now once you fill up the form, it is to be filled up in a ICMR summary sheet, and this has to be submitted. Now apart from this, there are a host of things. You have to fill the CV of the collaborator, you have to fill details regarding relevance to India's national health policies, justification for foreign funding, availability of infrastructure, role and status of the Indian PI. These are some of the things, and additional technical details, whether there would be any transfer of any human biological material or any transfer of technology. Some ethical issues also will be filled. Now this is the summary sheet which is available on the ICMR site. You have to fill it up to item number 43. So that summary sheet is filled up by you, and then if there is any transfer of materials, then this material transfer agreement form in addition has to be filled, and it has to be ratified by the Drug Controller General of India before you can ship out or ship in some biological samples. Now apart from this, if you have a protocol which is going to run in your unit, it needs a IEC clearance from your local institutional ethical committee. Now apart from this, if there are trials on drugs, then clearance from office of DGCI is to be submitted by the Indian PI to ICMR. So unless and until any drug or any intervention will require the trial to be cleared by the Drug Controller General of India, and his permission letter will be attached to your ICMR summary assembly sheet, and then that will go for screening, and then that will go to the Health Ministry Screening Committee for final approval. So this is the process. So if you obtain a local institutional ethical committee clearance and go ahead with foreign collaboration, that is plain and simple illegal. Till the time that no fingers are raised, you could do it, but the moment you get into trouble, or there are some insurance issues or intellectual property rights, you could be in deep trouble, because these are the rules which govern it. Now, if you are accepting some foreign currency transfer, then FCRA clearance from the External Affairs and Finance also needs to be appended. Now, if you are using animals, 31-page document which has been made by the Indian National Science Academy on the left side, and draft guidelines on the consent. Now remember, just now we are talking about certain procedures where we are taking informed consent. Now you know, in our country the guidelines have changed. You have to take an audio-visual consent. It has to be taped on a camera, and you have to store it for 5 years. You cannot do away with taking a written consent. Just a written consent doesn't hold in India. So these are the guidelines for the draft guidelines for audiovisual recording of the consent. Now, apart from this, all intellectual property rights, claims, etc., you need to have proper insurance for all the claims, and that needs to be set up. Now, the checklist of documents which needs to be submitted, 25 copies of each of the summary sheets and material transfer agreements, and 4 copies as a soft document. These would go to ICMR. So all the collaborators need to know this. This is what needs to go. Apart from this, if you are an NGO, like I can see here, if you are operating through an NGO, these 3 things: your annual reports, your balance sheets, your financial transactions, justification of your budget, composition of your ethical committee as per ICMR guidelines. If you made an ethical committee suiting your own principles, that does not hold. It should be as per the ICMR guidelines. So this is for the NGOs. Now, having said that, you must be thinking, I'm sure you must be thinking it is pretty exhaustive and how difficult it is to do research. I would like to share one piece of information here. I was telling Professor Modi. The information is that last year, 20 trials could sail through the whole process in India. And year before that, only 6 could sail through. So in last 2 years, meeting all the guidelines was possible only in 26 trials. And these were all interventional trials. This needs to be remembered by most of us. Now, guidelines, ICMR takes nearly 3 to 4 months, but they say that if it will try and honor deadlines of foreign collaborators. I don't know what they mean by saying that it will honor deadlines. If you have a deadline that the funding agency requires the proposal to be approved within the next 2 months, they will try and honor it. But I don't know what is the success rate at this honoring, whether it is 10% or 90%, not very sure. So you literally have to run to ICMR every single day when you are submitting it. You have to keep a track of your file, and as you know, the system in India, the file tracking, the movement from one office to another needs to be closely followed. And there are professional bodies, mind you, which will help you in this process, and they will charge a professional fees for it. I don't know whether it is legal or illegal in India, but there would be some bodies which would probably be helping you to go through this process. Now, the challenges of collaborative research in India: lack of awareness. Even though 18 MOUs occur, focus on neonatal research is lacking. So organization level MOUs are the need of the hour. Now, I would just like, now comes the roadmap, which I would like to suggest from my perspective in the forum and in the National Neonatal Policy. In the Indian Newborn Action Plan, one of the 6 major guiding principles is collaboration and partnerships. Now, this is a figure I think most of you know, but it is a figure I always like to show in every forum so that it strikes us here. And this is a figure which we need to rub off. I always use this word from the face of this country. And this is that 16% global maternal deaths and 27% neonatal mortality along with 40% global burden of low birth weight and 1.7 billion birth defects annually. This is what India is grappling with. And this is what has given us the tag of largest contributors to neonatal mortality in the world. Well, what kills our babies? These two books very clearly spell out. I happen to be an author for both of them. I'm very lucky to be a part of this process. These two books are available for free. People who've got a copy need to peruse through it. People who've not got, they are available for free download from Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. What kills our babies is well known. This is 97% of our babies die because of these things. Well, the collaborative research, if I am concerned, should focus on areas where it will impact the neonatal mortality. So you should try and design your research in such a manner that it is impacting neonatal mortality. Neonatal mortality from the delivery room, these are all real photographs which our team has taken in Bihar and states of West Bengal. The delivery room, the baby being nursed with the mother in the postnatal ward. Our nurses who are eager to learn but lack proper resources and exposure. Our doctors who are eager to learn, who need to be sensitized to the latest in neonatal research. And our neonatal SNCOs, which are overcrowded and have disinfection policies and other policies which need tremendous improvement. So these are the, I think this is gone off. So these are the areas where we would like to collaborate. And lastly, I would say IT in neonatal health is very, very important. Like we were talking about the UK database. The government of India has released a database, but dashboard indicators which are valid globally, which speak the same language as a database in UK picks up. And that is when the data will not have any heterogeneity and we can have homogeneous data with limited database. Today in India, the people are afraid of sharing their data. Either it is too lengthy or they feel it is an intrusion of their privacy, or they feel that it will be more investigative. And that is the reason the units are not sharing the data. Well, if we have 8 or 10 dashboard indicators which are common globally, where we could have a global database, I think that is the need of the hour. Now coming to the last slide, this is just day before yesterday in Delhi. I was reading Times of India. This is what has come in Nature this week. And just read what it says. Nature, one of world's leading science journals, says, scientists in India complain that funds for grants arrive months late and that it takes years to fill position. As a measure of the problem, 32% of national laboratories lack permanent leaders. So this is a problem which exists in this country, and I think the forum and the collaboration with the Royal College, we look forward to addressing these issues. I showed you the rules because I think this August gathering need to be aware of the legislation. It is not that we cannot take these rules into the right spirit. We should always take the proper precautions when conducting research, because you know, a single badly conducted research spoils the research prospects of hundreds of well-designed, ethical, well-conducted studies. And that is what the media highlights. We all know that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Neena Modi and Professor Vikram Datta, to share with us today your experience and contribution to medical research. I thank Dr. Vikram Datta and Professor Neena Modi.
Thanks, Dr. Modi and Professor Vikram Datta for enlightening us with his talk. Until yesterday, I was very confident after listening to Dr. Ravi Sami's talk and Sudhir Dayal's talk with Bangalore London Research Post, and we went and had a couple of drinks with some of the neonatologists as well, thinking that there's much to be done. But after listening to Professor Vikram Datta's talk today, I think I might probably retire by then until I get into one of the research things as well. There are a few things. You said to fill in a form of 43 questions, read 44 pages, a book to be completed. I don't know whether these are all the building blocks. Is this encouraging or discouraging? That's one thing. Why is it made in such a tough manner to achieve small things? That's one question. The second thing is, now, I don't know whether all the experts are based in the private sector or private medical colleges, and the things they concentrate on their units. But how will it improve in the government sector unless there is a team with the government sector and the private sector together to get the nation forward?
Okay, so I think you have a very valid point because most of the documentations which are required, you would agree with me that none of them is superfluous. If you would see the documentary process which would be required for a NIH grant or maybe NHS grant, I think it would be far more elaborate than this, and our friends in the UK would agree to that. That is one. The most important part is that the documentation and the process remains the same in most of the countries. In India, we have picked up the documentation and the process from the West or from experiences of our partners. That's absolutely right. It's a human subject which is being subjected to research. His rights, his privacy, his human rights, and also his informed consent needs to be in place, whether it is US or it is UK or it's underprivileged setting. But the point why we feel disheartened is not because of the documentation, because we are not aware that this is going to be done in the particular time frame which has been written. When the time frame is written 3 months, does it really mean 3 months? Will I have to go 30 times to Delhi to pursue my file? That is the problem. And that is where the role of the professional organizations comes. And that is the reason I think I'm thankful to Ravi and Praveen for calling me here. We have a tremendous strength. Individually, if we go and raise our voices, we're not going to achieve anything. We have access. As an NNF secretary, I could walk into Dr. Harshvardhan's office without appointment. But if I go as Dr. Vikram Datta, his PA will not allow me to even enter his office. So that is the power of the organization. Neonatal research, pediatric research, documentation is okay, but what we have to see is that the timelines are respected, we respect our patients, and we don't feel disheartened by this documentation. 43 columns is just 5 or 6 pages. It is not tough. Asking for CVs of foreign collaborators is okay. FCRA accounts is okay. There are so many clandestine operations, terrorist activities occurring. There's a reason behind everything which the government is doing. But we need to see it in the positive direction. We need to advocate it. And my message in telling you all here about these rules was to make you familiar that this is the process. You know that there is HMSC, you have to go through IEC to ICMR, then HMSC, then go a material transfer agreement and all those things, so that you are aware and nobody takes you for a ride. But the most important part is that if we don't promote research in an ethical manner in this country, and this is the glitterati of neonatal research in this country, if we don't promote it, and why this has happened, addressing your question, in 2013 there was a Supreme Court ruling because of a XYZ trial, I won't name it. There were trials where there were deaths and it was done in the most atrocious manner. And that is what I said in my last talk, that one improperly conducted unethical trial damages the prospects of multiple well-conducted ethical trials. And that is what led to a Supreme Court ruling, and that is what immediately there was a cap, all the guidelines were changed and it became very voluminous and the process became very strict. My own DM students in New Delhi are unable to do randomized control trials. And I am telling it from the podium, I have shared it with so many of my colleagues, because just the Institutional Ethical Committee is not passing any randomized control trial. They say who's going to pay for the insurance. So there is no fund, like Madam said, the availability of a fund for promotion of research, giving time out for research. Ravi's done MD in research. Nothing like that exists in India. We are not given any extra credit for working on research beyond our routine clinical hours. So that is very important. Any foreign funding is seen as with suspicion in this country. So that is very, very important. The mindset needs to be changed. And we need not be afraid of whatever is there. You write a class 10 exam, probably you write more documents to become a doctor. I don't think this is difficult enough for anyone of us.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I just add on to what you said. It's absolutely right. There's a need for these kind of regulations. And it happened some 4 years back. It was very easy to do any kind of trials in India. And that was misused by a number of companies. So in India, people, by clinical trial, people often mean it's a drug trial, by industry-funded trials. And these, many of these trials came into, had bad publicity a few years back. And that's how this alarm bells went off, and ICMR and the DCGA started putting these rules. But the pendulum swung completely to one side, and all of a sudden the clinical trials in India stopped. And gradually, because ICMR did not have the expertise to have stringent guidelines to do these studies, or how to regulate these studies. So when they started off, the regulations were so stringent and nobody could do anything. And then gradually over the last few years, it's become much more reasonable. But many of these things like insurance for trials, it's already there. In the UK, any study you do needs insurance. It's a standard, standard practice, which was never there in India. So some of these things are good, and I'm sure regulations will get better with time. But academic research is suffering because of industry trials, which had bad publicity.
Can I ask a question Can I ask a question of Professor Datta? Because the framework that you showed us for regulation, really, just picking up on Sulin's comment, really is very similar to the regulations that we have for drug trials, but not for non-medicinal product trials, so not for non-drug trials. And for example, some of the processes that you described clearly are for drug trials, because you talked about a drug authorization, or I forget what phrase you used. So my question is, is this regulatory framework putting all research into the same category, or are there different categories of research?
I would just like to respond to that. The drug trials, in addition to the ICMR and HMSC approval, have to seek a DGCI and a MTA and Animal Research Ethical Guideline clearance. These are in addition. All trials which are done in India from 2009 onwards have to be registered regardless of their registration with the international registry. They have to be registered at ctri.nic.in, that is the Clinical Trials Registry of India. And if you go to the home page of the CTRI, that is ctri.nic.in, you will find that it is very clearly mentioned, ma'am, that apart from drug trials, any trials which even to the extent of lifestyle modification, like if I want to compare a 2-kilometer walk with a 4-kilometer walk in a subset of my patients, I am not intervening anything, or maybe sleep patterns or relaxation techniques or yoga, they have to be registered, and they have to be, if they have got to be passed through the same process, that is the ICMR approval and the HMSC approval, which is final. If they have to be published in India, that is very, very important. 11 editors of 11 scientific journals have given in writing in India that any of these publications, something like that, international journal editors, IJC, ME or something, which is there, which holds that if you don't have a clinical registry number, it can't get published. So same thing is valid in India, and very clearly says that apart from drugs, any modification, they have to be registered and they have to follow the process. But the process, of course, will be slightly more easier in this, because no MTA and no DGCI. DGCI approval is very, very important. And one word I would just like to tell here, that DGCI approval for a drug which is licensed for X use and is being used for a Y use, or a particular salt of that drug which is registered and you want to use another salt, also needs to seek a particular thing. It's something like a furosemide, you want to aerosolize it and give it, or you want to give it IV. Suppose you want to give it IV, and for a particular new disease, if you are giving it, you'll have to seek a DGCA.
Paracetamol for PDA, they are asked us to get the DGCA.
Very thankful to Prof. Datta for making us aware. I mean, the first point of losing our apprehensions is to be aware of the processes, and you very patiently outlined the reasons behind why those regulations are in place. Just the couple of points I think we need to represent as organizations, whether within NNF Karnataka or NNF, is one is I think it should be decentralized. If I have to go to Delhi every so often to move a file, it becomes difficult. There are ICMR outreach stations all over the country. Whether some of the powers could be devolved, whether we could ask for that, start asking for that. The second thing is, in this day and age, submitting 25 hard copies and 4 soft copies. I think we should have a secure login, as RCN in UK probably has, and other research networks have. Secure login, and you could start the processes first. I mean, this is 21st century. So those 2 comments.
Can I just
quickly respond? Well, 25 hard copies are meant for those 25 members of various committees who find it very difficult to read the soft copies, because they are all very senior bureaucrats in the Ministry of Finance, External Affairs, DST. They would require a hard copy to be placed. Just to prevent the printing and the other exigencies which the office would not be, they just make a file 25. The moment the meetings come, because we are part of most of these DST committees, etc., they will just take out from there and give it 1 to each. It's just because of logistic reasons. But your point is well taken. You don't have to go to Delhi to follow it up, but if you want to expedite the process, that's how it works in India.
Dr. Kandra.
Yeah. See, I had some experience in 3 drug trials in newborns, and one phase contrast material, which was the Embrace device used as a thermal device as a non-inferiority trial comparing with radiant warmers, and which we published in archives recently. It's not so difficult. It is not so heartbreaking as what Vikram has said. It is a tedious process, no doubt.
Can I ask you?
No, I'll tell you.
The process, because what we're discussing is a company coming in, they had already approved.
No, this particular, see, the multi-center drug trials is easy.
Yeah.
But the thermal device which we tried was not a sponsored trial, neither was it a kind of, it was a device trial which we took it upon ourselves, and 2 organizations in this city, St. John's and us and Cloud9, we did it ourselves. It was supported by a clinical research organization which took on the onus of trying to get all this processing done. So we have these clinical research organizations. For a small fee, they would probably help us get through the processing. But I think the process is important to make sure that the patient safety is safeguarded. I think that is the essence of the whole thing. And so that clinical trials continue to be done here, and their impact is there. So I think we should still encourage, you should not get discouraged by this.
So that's the answer for you, Dr. Gowda. I know your sentiments about, like, when you heard those things, it's easy to get disappointed and follow the status quo. But we have to start somewhere, and that's the whole point of it. And that's an example that, it's been done in several places as such. And we have to pass those hurdles. Otherwise, we all just follow whatever is been happening over the years and such. But the one question that nobody has got, you had some more comments. Okay, is we do see 2 different worlds in India in terms of. That's the reason we wanted you to talk about, what all NNF is doing a fantastic job in many of the states, and Government of India, WHO, and institutes like AIIMS and PGI are doing the work there. We all have a passion for the newborn care, and we want to improve things. Does that mean everybody has to work towards, let's say, shall we call it low socioeconomic problems alone, or if parallelly can things be, if you see the mortality, Professor Shantaram Baliga could not make it today, but he always notices that in medical colleges the deaths are very higher. So we're talking about in these circumstances as well, or even in tertiary care hospitals as well. So parallelly, research doesn't mean that we're going to discover something. Simple things like the data collection. For that, we don't need to be kind of worried about it. So what's your opinion on that?
Praveen, if you would just recollect what I said, and I'm quoting Professor Vinod Paul from the Jaipur Newborn Week, which was very successful. In November 2014, we had experts from 17 different partner organizations. And there, Professor Vinod Paul has worked extensively for Global Every Newborn Action Plan, and he's brought out a series of Lancet Survival for India specific. Now, I'm quoting exactly Professor Vinod Paul, and Professor Vinod Paul at that point of time said, and I was just discussing with Professor Vani during the tea time, and it says that now the time has come for the high impact studies to shift their focus from community-based interventions to facility-based interventions, to the ratio of 20% in community to 80% in facility. Because this is the time when the community-based interventions will yield limited amount of results, and our survival statistics are going to improve only if we ready our facilities and take them to state-of-art unit. And that is why the level 2 accreditation and quality improvement process in our country has gone to that level. So that is very important, but that does not negate the role of community in any way. Of course, India lives in community. 20% of the intervention need to be in community, and very important is community participation. In Bangalore, you were a part of the meeting when we had representatives from multiple states, and we got the community participation thing inside the accreditation. And that is important, that the focus shifts to community, but facilities 80%, and that is exactly I'm quoting from Dr. Paul's talk that time. So that answers your question, that our experts who are trained abroad, our experts who are tertiary care hospitals, you have the responsibility of developing innovative technologies, I would say, which would also expand beyond your ICUs into other level 2 ICUs. Because hospitals like Manipal, Ovum, etc. are limited in this country. You need to have, that does not mean you go down to level 1 level. You would say sustainable technologies which work wonders in your ICU, maybe at a lesser cost, maybe more easily manufacturable in the country, need to be brought. And you are the leaders who are going to do it for this nation.
Thank you. I really hope that I was having what Professor Modi as well, that you want to take up further and start small and try to show some difference, and then obviously more people will be involved and the process will become easier. If no other comments are there, we will conclude now, and I thank you.
Conference. I would now like to call upon Dr. Praveen Venkatgiri, who is the organizing chairperson for this conference, to give a vote of thanks.